So we know that there are 88 constellations in the night sky, many of which are Greek in origin and show up to some degree in the world of Percy Jackson. Last month, we released the first of these Constellation Chronicles and the story of Aries, and so now we're entering the season of Taurus. So we wanted to make another one of these Astronomy videos on the Taurus bull. And if you want a complete breakdown of all of our sources and citations, we attached a full bibliography in our Aries video. But for this video, let's dive into Taurus. The story of Taurus begins as most Greek myths do, because Zeus saw a pretty mortal. When in doubt, just assume that most Greek tragedies begin with Zeus seeing a pretty mortal. But in this particular case, the young Phoenician princess was named Europa. As the daughter of King Eckardt, the kingdom was situated nicely on the coast of the Mediterranean as a hub of maritime trade and was a common resting place for sailors and travelers. Merchants and traders would routinely resupply in their kingdom before finishing their journey, and they quickly became a pillar of sea travel in the Greek community. Rather than bringing her flowers and trying his hand at flattery, Zeus turned himself into a large white bull and roamed the countryside just beyond the palace, and Europa was captivated by the creature. In ancient times, a bull was seen as a symbol of grace and refined strength. They were not rampaging beasts, but instead they used their strength to protect and safeguard, and the color white was used to represent purity and peace, so the transformation into a white bull was a deliberate and calculated choice. He wanted to show Europa that he had the strength to protect while also being peaceful. She approached it and found that it was surprisingly receptive to being pet, and the bull even laid down at her feet to show her how docile it was. Eventually, she climbed onto its back and the bull took off. Terrified, Europa held on for dear life as the bull crashed across the waves, finally revealing Zeus's true nature as a powerful beast who took what he wanted without answering to anyone, and eventually landed on the distant island of Crete, stranding her away from her home and everything that she knew. On the island of Crete, Zeus finally revealed himself to Europa, and the two eventually would sire 3 sons, all of whom would become incredibly important in the history of the Greek mythos. The first of their sons was Minos, the future king of Crete, and in an ironic twist of fate, Minos would later become the stepfather to the Minotaur, the half-man, half-bull that terrorized his nation. His wife, Pasiphae, had the misfortune of angering the goddess Aphrodite, and so Aphrodite caused her to fall in love with Minos' prized bull, which resulted in the creation of the Minotaur, the tar, or the bull of King Minos, which is where it gets its name, Minotaur. Their second son, Rhadamanthus, was a renowned hero in his own right, who ended up becoming one of the judges of the dead when he eventually passed on to the underworld. And their third child, Sarpedon, would actually end up exiled from Crete. But he would later go on to become the king of Lycia and fight for the side of Troy in the Trojan War, dying by Patroclus. Europa herself, however, continued to be admired by Zeus, indicating that this might not have been a one-off infatuation like many of other Zeus's past endeavors. He continued to bring her divine gifts of remarkable craftsmanship, including a magic necklace and even an invincible guardian. You see, this story is also the origin of the bronze statue known as Talos, the 100-foot warrior crafted by Hephaestus himself to safeguard the kingdom of Crete. He ensured that no one would be able to get to her, and that she would always be protected by not just Talos, but a javelin that would always hit its mark, and a magic hound named Laplace, who was said to have always captured its prey regardless of how fast or elusive it might be. He made sure that Europa would be safe, and interestingly enough, we don't actually have any firm accounts of Hera intervening in this particular union, even though she is almost always a key factor in these stories. Whether she remained unaware or willingly left Europa alone is unclear, but if she did deliberately choose to leave Europa alone, we don't know exactly why. So it's more likely that the union was kept a secret from her. Eventually, however, Zeus did return to Olympus and resumed his duties as the king of the gods, which left Europa to marry the mortal king Asterius, who adopted her 3 sons as his own. But the legacy of Europa was not over. This is not only where we get the name of Jupiter's moon, but also how the continent Europe was named, since Europa was a divinely protected mother and queen, even more so than Zeus's other affairs. We struggle to find any stories where Zeus bestowed this many gifts of explicitly protective nature on anyone else, and it's clear that he cared about Europa's safety and well-being, which is strange for Zeus. In the northern sky, the statue of Taurus sits between Aries and Gemini, and is a representation of the sturdy white bull that led Europa away from her home and took her to the new land at the dawn of the Cretan kingdom. The brightest star in the constellation is Aldebaran, which is the 14th brightest star in the sky with an apparent magnitude of 0.85. For the science side of things, as a quick reminder, apparent magnitude is a measure of how much detectable radiation a star gives off beyond just visible light. The lower the scale, the brighter the object. The full moon, for example, is a negative 11, and the brightest star in the sky, Sirius, is a negative 1.44. Just to clarify, the full moon does not give off radiation of its own, but it reflects the light from the sun that we can measure. So we're not saying the moon gives off its own energy, we're just saying that it has a measurable presence in the sky because of the sun's light. The Andromeda Galaxy, which is notoriously hazy and barely visible with the naked eye, has an apparent magnitude of 3.44, and an example of a zero would be something like Vega, which is the 5th brightest star in the night sky. Taurus is the 17th largest constellation in the sky and takes up about 797 square degrees in the sky. And even though it's said to be the zodiac from the 20th of April to the 20th of May, that's not technically correct anymore. The Earth has a tilt of about 23 degrees, and that's why we have seasons. But as we rotate, we also have a slight wobble. This is called precession, and you can visualize it if you imagine a spinning top, which has just a slight wobble to it. And it just so happens that the Earth takes about 26,000 years to complete a full precession. What this means, though, is that the zodiac system was designed around 400 BC, which was almost 2,500 years ago, and it hasn't been updated since. What this means, however, is that we've deviated by almost 1/12 of the night sky, which shifts all of the zodiac constellations by about a month. And that means that they no longer fit with what they were 2,000 years ago. If we wanted to be technically accurate, we would have to shift all of the zodiac signs forward by one spot, which means if you were born between April 20th and May 20th, you might not be a Taurus at all. You might be a Gemini. And if we count the 13th zodiac sign, Orpheus, then we would see about one shift every 2,000 years, since 2,000 is 1/13th of 26,000. And it would mean that we're more than an entire constellation off. This rabbit hole goes way deeper into astrophysics than we are qualified to speak on, but it's a really fascinating detail of the zodiac calendar that we don't think is talked about enough. But let us know if you want us to keep covering the zodiac signs in this series of Constellation Chronicles. We plan to release one of these with the shift of the zodiac calendar. So if all goes well, you'll be seeing this on around the 20th of April. As always, my friends, take care, watch out for one another. We're happy to have you with us today, and we'll see you in the next one.